Welcome to hell.
Hello and welcome to the Jersey Shore Musicians Podcast. I'm Matt. That's Jeff. And tonight we have our good friend, Mr. Jack Pitzer.
All right.
Also known as Hinge.
Hello, I'm Hinge.
How we doing, brother?
Good. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you guys.
The honor's all ours. All ours.
Same here.
We've admired your work for years.
I admired working with you for years. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, I used to love it when you always did Sound for Useless. That was the best. That's when we sounded the best.
Oh, thank you. That's a real compliment coming from you. So I really appreciate that. And hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, hopefully. We played yesterday, and it was interesting. You know, I'm used to everybody distancing and the masks, and then all of a sudden I played a show yesterday, and I mean, there had to be 100, 120 people in this little tiny place. Everybody's all over the place. There's no mask. They're going in and out of the buildings. I'm just like, this is chaos.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to get used to real life again.
It was just
going to be a little adjustment.
That's what it was,
period.
but it's just like in this time, not having that for so long, it just felt strange.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah.
So, Jack, tell us, what got you into doing live sound?
Okay. So I grew up as a super nerd. When I was a little kid, I was fascinated by sound. My parents had a thing called a Victrola. It was a tube-powered record player. And when I was about 6 years old, I didn't like how it sounded. And I took the entire thing apart. It was all over my living room. And I actually put it back together just by looking at it. I'm still 6 years old. And I put it back together, and it sounded better. And I grew up with a fascination for sound. And as I got older, my nerd world converged with smoking pot, getting in the car, and playing guitar. And around 1976 or 77, I went from being a straight A student in my high school to becoming the Jeff Spicoli of my high school. I had long hair, I had a Dodge Charger, I had a piece of shit guitar.
Ah, Dodge Charger.
And I went to go see my first concert at Convention Hall in Asbury Park. And the band was the Charlie Daniels Band.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I walked in Convention Hall for the first time with my best friend, and I could not believe what it was like. It was like first concert, like it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. And at the back of the hall was this platform with this giant thing that looked like the bridge of the Starship Enterprise. And I looked at that thing and I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but I want to do it. And I spent the entire concert watching the sound guy. I really didn't care about Charlie Daniels. Mm-hmm. They were good, but I was fascinated by this giant piece of equipment. And
that's how your calling.
That's how I got started at the very first show. And then I went to go see Beatlemania on Broadway, and the same thing. There was this amazing mixing board at the back, and I was like, oh my God, it sounds so good in here. Wow. And I was hooked. And,
that's awesome.
That's how I got started. And I played in bands my entire life. I've been in the same band for 37 years, but I have always leaned more towards playing the band by doing sound than playing in a band, although I had some pretty huge successes as a guitar player as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. You don't hear that every day.
Yeah, I think playing in a band for so long on a fairly high level made me a better sound guy because it also put me in touch with what it sounds like on stage for bands. So I kind of really spend a lot of time with the sound on stage with monitors and things because I know what it sounds like on a good sounding stage and a bad sounding stage. So that's important to me. Just getting that right.
That is awesome.
That's because you got to experience both ends of it. So you know what you'd want to hear up there. So that's what you want to put out to other people. That
Exactly.
Are up there.
Yeah. Because if you're on stage, it should sound like a big rock show, not just out front, but on stage. And if it sounds like shit on stage, you probably are not going to have a good time, and it's not going to feel like it's sort of like being in a studio and rocking out with headphones on. It's not as fun as playing in a good show with really good monitors.
And if you have good monitors, you're just going to perform that.
Yeah,
much
and you
better.
actually forget that you're on stage. You just rock out.
Yeah.
So that's what
Which
I like
I know
to do.
you've done great all the time. With Rope Tree, we'd be on there. I'd be like, man, I heard everything. No problems, And I
Do
thought
you
we had great
remember the
shows.
time I did sound for you not too long ago when I kept calling your singer the wrong name?
No.
Yeah, and somebody kept correcting me every time. I forget what I was calling him, but I would say blah, and somebody would go blah. And I must have did it 15 times during the show.
I don't remember.
Yeah,
that.
it was a pretty amazing thing.
Oh boy, that's funny.
That's good.
So okay, so that's how you got into it. Let's fast forward a little bit. What was your first gig as a sound person? Was it for a band? Was it as a place? Like, were you like so and so's permanent monitor guy?
Okay, so around 1980, I played in a band that was a Doors cover band.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was a guitar player in a Doors cover band.
Oh, that's great. You were Robbie Krieger. That's great.
Yeah, I was Robbie Krieger. And we bought our own PA system from Red Bank Music. It isn't there anymore. It was actually kind of stolen. It was like an illegal PA system because the bass player traded liquor for the PA system.
Oh, that's good.
But the problem was nobody knew how to use it. Mm-hmm. And we set it up. We used to rehearse in a chicken coop in Englishtown. And they set it up in there, and it was an enormous PA system. You could play a 1,000 people venue with this thing. And it had a giant Soundcraft mixing board. And I taught myself how to do sound, and I would basically hang out there all hours of the night playing with the PA system, and I taught myself how to use it. So eventually we morphed into it. Oddly enough, we became a spandex-wearing Judas Priest cover band.
Okay.
And we
I like how you led with the spandex.
Yeah, picture this. I wish there were pictures to prove it, but it really happened. And we still had the giant PA system. And I did that until that band fell apart. Eventually, I joined an Elvis cover band.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I moved into a place called the Firehouse in Oceanport, which was also a recording studio. And the guy that I replaced who lived there was the original sound guy at the Braden Bar in Long Branch. And he unfortunately passed away from a heroin overdose. And I threw my hat, my hand, I threw something in the hat. No, I threw my name in the hat, and I became the house guy at the Braden Bar around 1980, 1981.
Okay.
And that really changed everything because I literally lived there. I got paid a whopping $35 a show, and I loved it. And I hated the way it sounded, and I would endlessly crawl around in these big dusty speakers and tweak the shit out of it. And I was at the Braden during I think the most exciting years there. There's a new hardcore scene, there's a punk scene. It was amazing. It was like literally sold out every single night. So I really learned my chops at the Braden Bar. I loved every minute of it.
Our generation will say is you don't really hear of like the Brighton being sold out every night. Well, now you're not going to hear about it at all.
Yeah, it was pretty
unfortunately.
legendary back then.
That's something. But you always heard about the Brighton Bar, no matter what. Like, so if I'm late 90s, early 2000s, you're like, oh, the Brighton Bar, that's cool, man. But you would go there and you're like, all right. It sounded good. It just didn't have the vibe that everybody always talks about, but you got to actually live it.
Well, in the 1980s, the music scene around the Jersey Shore was all cover bands.
Okay.
Everything was
It's
cover
like it was
bands.
now.
Yeah, like Twisted Sister was the biggest thing anywhere. They used to play, the Stone Pony was a cover band place. They didn't have original music back in the 80s, really.
Wow.
Every venue was cover bands, and it was like Zeppelin cover bands, Rush cover bands, Pink Floyd cover bands, Rolling Stones cover bands. That's what the scene was. The Braden Bar, though, was an original venue, and that's like at that time, 1980s, that's when punk rock started out, and everybody who played there was also playing at CBGB's and City Gardens and all that. So the Brighton like had the edge of a lot of places. Like they were the most original of the rock clubs then.
That's all. You know, it's funny too is you never really hear like the Pony was a cover place.
Oh
Yeah,
They like keep that.
That's that dark past they don't like to talk about.
That never happened. That's cool. Very cool. Thank you for clarifying.
My drummer's brother-in-law, he was in the Lemmings and Shovelhead. He plays drums and
Shovelhead, amazing band.
Oh yeah, they're phenomenal. But he used to tell us stories all the time about play because they lived at the Brighton. They played there all the time. And then Tommy Southard from Solace.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, we're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so after the Brighton, what was next?
Well, there was a fateful gig that I got. There was a friend of mine who hung out at the Brighton. His name is Gunter Ford. He was the guy who originally signed Metallica. He lives in Rumson. And he had this little company called World Entertainment. And he had Metallica, and he had this band called Morbid Angel, which was one of the first big American death metal bands. Yeah. And he also had this band from Bergenfield called Mucky Pup, which was a kind of a funny punk rock band that had some success. They won a contest to put a song in the comic book, the comics called Bloom County. And they recorded the song, and it went out to millions of things, and they took off. They became a little band that did really well, mostly in Europe. So this guy approached me one day, and he loved how I did sound at the Brighton Bar. He goes, "Hey, listen, I got a crazy little idea. Everything I ever talked about this guy was a crazy little idea." He goes, "I got two thoughts for you." He goes, "I got this band, Morbid Angel, and they need a sound guy for the Ritz in New York City. Or I want you to audition as either a sound guy or the guitar player for this band, Mucky Pup." And I was like, "All right, I'll do all of them."
Yeah.
Because that's the way I was back then. So he's like, "All right, so the gig is Friday at the Ritz in New York City." And I'm shitting in my pants because I had only done sound at the Brighton Bar and graduation parties and places where we could take our own PA system on the beach at Sandy Hook, all sorts of stuff. But now I'm going to go to the Ritz, and I had been going to see like Living Color, Husker Du, Soul Asylum, all these bands that were huge at the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm going to go do sound where I saw Husker Du and Soul Asylum. And I'm like, oh, all right, cool. I get there. It's a sold out show. I meet these guys. They're totally like, don't talk to us. And all of a sudden I'm confronted with a mixing board that is 14 times bigger than the one at the Brighton Bar with all these gates and compressors. And anyhow, I have no idea what I'm doing. I just leaned back. I went away from the microphone.
It happens.
And lo and behold, I step up to the plate and I do an amazing job. And I cannot believe I just pulled this off. It was 1,400 people and I killed it. And it was one of the most mind-blowing experiences of my life. First gig in New York City at a major venue, and I'm super psyched.
That's a real major venue.
Yeah, major venue. It also, it became Studio 54. It's still a venue. I don't know what it is now, but it was an amazing experience. And that night was also the night that Nirvana came out with Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I was driving home from the Ritz, and that came on the radio on WNEW. It was the very first time they ever played it in New York. And I'm driving down the turnpike, and all of a sudden this guy comes, Scott Muni or somebody comes on. He's like, "Okay, now I'm going to play a song that's got a sound you've never heard before. Goes, this is going to blow you away. This is a new band called Nirvana, and it's called Smells Like Teen Spirit." And I was like, holy shit. I don't know if maybe to some people they eventually became cliche because they were so big. Mm-hmm. But if you listen to them the first time, it was the most refreshing thing ever. Mm-hmm. It was so raw and over the top. And it ends, and the guy goes, "Wow." Goes, "You know what? I'm going to play it again." He played it again. I've never heard that in my entire life. A DJ at a big radio station play a song twice in a row. And I drove home. And that was it. And a day or two later, I get a call from this guy, Gunter Ford, and he's like, "Well, you did a great job. they didn't really like you so much. I was like, oh crap, and he's like, but you did an amazing job. That was the best they ever heard. But you were maybe a little too happy and positive for them. They were kind of morose and not such nice guys. And I was like, hey everybody, and I think they wanted somebody who was like, but I'm not like that. And he goes, okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I want you to be the guitar player for Mucky Pups. So I want you to learn these songs, go audition for them. I'm sure you're going to get it. And rest is history. Next thing you know, I get the audition and I'm on a plane and I do my first show as a guitar player with that band with another guitar player in Paris for about 4,000 people.
Wow. And
this band was virtually nothing in America, but in Europe they were huge.
Like David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, David Hasselhoff. I actually met David Hasselhoff in Germany.
That's awesome.
That's a whole other story. But so I went to Europe, and I spent the next almost 2 years touring Europe and all over America with this band. And it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Spent 3-4 months at a time just touring Europe, Germany, Holland, Scandinavia, back and forth. And it was kind of a rough experience for me because they loved me, but they kind of liked to goof on me, and I kind of had a fragile ego at the time. Mm. So eventually the band fell apart, and then they hired me back as the sound guy. And I was like, oh man, go to Europe as a sound guy. I'm like, all right, I'm in. And next thing you know, I'm on a plane. I'm going back to Europe with him as a sound guy. And I did a tour with him as a sound guy. And then I went back with him as a guitar player. But this time we toured with the band Meshuggah. And I wound up being the sound guy for Meshuggah and playing guitar in Mucky Pup, which was amazing. It was Meshuggah's very first tour.
Oh, wow.
And that was an amazing experience. I was like, I'd never heard anything like that.
Wow, Meshuggah, they're one of a kind.
So over the top. And they were the nicest guys. One of my favorite experiences of my entire music life was we went out, we were in Finland, and we went out to this log cabin in the woods that had no electricity. They had solar power before there was solar power. This crazy Viking looking guy. Probably his name was Sven. He built this battery system and he built this cabin out in the woods, and we sat in an attic where he told us a story about somebody hung from those rafters, and we listened to Kiss on vinyl and with Meshuggah. And it was like one of the craziest things I ever did in my life.
Wow.
Amazing experience.
Yeah, and you'll never forget that one.
Yeah.
All those experiences cemented my place in the music world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, after the touring, I'm trying to get you to that spot where we all know you're from.
How did I get to the Saint?
That's right.
All right, so I'm going to get us to the Saint really quick, all right?
All right, we're at the Saint.
So after Mucky Pup, everything fizzled out for about a week or two. My next door neighbor was the sound guy for No Doubt.
Oh, wow.
And he said, hey, I know this band. I've got this band that's looking for a sound guy. He goes, I don't know if you heard of them yet, but they got this song on the radio, and it goes, the roof is on fire. I'm like, oh my God, I heard that song the other day. And it's like, I was driving my car and I heard this song, and I was like, I bet you I'm going to wind up doing sound for them. I swear to God, it happened this exact way.
Wow.
Before he talked to me, I heard that song. I was like, I bet you I'm going to wind up doing sound for that band. Next thing you know, I'm on tour with the Bloodhound Gang for a year, travel the world, New Zealand, Japan, all of America 15 times, all of Europe, Russia, everything. Get back from that, it's over. Band Monster Banger. It's like, hey, you want to go to Europe with us? And we got this new album coming out called Power Trip. And I did sound from them at their very first show. They knew me from the Brighton. They were a Brighton bar band.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, I'm on tour with them for a year of my life. Unfortunately, it was not the best experience for me, but we did get to tour with Aerosmith, Van Halen, Marilyn Manson with Hole opening, Rob Zombie, Metallica. Unfortunately, I developed a pretty unhealthy relationship with a cocaine and crystal meth on that tour. And I got fired from that. Oh, we also toured with Megadeth.
Okay.
And a member of Megadeth saw me doing lines of meth backstage, and he reported it to the band. And, that was my downfall. And at the end of that tour, we did a show with Metallica in Hawaii, and then the next day flew to Alaska and did another show. And I got home from that, and the manager called me up and told me I was fired. Wow. So I'm like, well, what do I do? And I called up my friends, the Bloodhound Gang. And then I spent the next 2.5 years on the road with them. And that was when they came out with the song, The Bad Touch, which you might know from the chorus that goes, you and me, baby, ain't nothing but mammals. So let's do it like they do on the Discovery Channel. And that was an enormous hit. They sold 9 million CDs on that. And I spent the next 2.5 years of my life crisscrossing the globe with them.
That's awesome.
And that was a mind-blowing experience. We lived like rock stars. We had a crew bus and a band bus. We flew on private jets, played with bands like Rammstein, hung out with them, hung out with Tommy Lee.
Wow.
All sorts of crazy shit, you know. It was an amazing experience, but unfortunately,
all good things come to an end.
Unfortunately, I had progressed from drugs to having a ripping alcohol problem. It didn't help that the Bloodhound Gang was sponsored by Jägermeister.
Oh, geez.
And so we had a tour bus that was wrapped in the Jägermeister label. And I drank like a fish. And I convinced myself that I have to get out of this business, because I actually did see a lot of people die and, ruin their careers.
Yeah.
And in the year 2000, I was like, that's it. When this tour's over, I'm going to quit the music business and I'm going to go home. And I went home to a basic alcoholic, empty life. That was year 2000. And I lived in Allenhurst. And one day I went to do my laundry at a laundromat in Asbury Park. And there was this door open at this club on the corner of, whatever that corner is there.
Whatever that corner. But
and I see this
corner.
guy I knew from another
Main
club
Street.
in Asbury called T-Bird's Cafe, which is where the Tapatia is now. That was where the Saint got its start, right down the street. And I was like, hey, Scott. And he's like, hey, what's happening? I was like, is that where you're working now? He's like, yeah, come on in and take a look. I walked in. I was like, whoa, this is super, super cool. And he offered me a job. And I stayed there for 17 years.
Wow.
There was a 2-year period when I moved to North Jersey, though. I got a job with a high-end web design company. So I moved to Bergen County, and I worked in the exciting world of web design for a while. I actually designed the band NSYNC's final website.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I did websites. I came up with the concept. I didn't do all the work, but I came up with the idea. And I also did them for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated and Martini Racing and Bacardi and all sorts of stuff.
Oh, wow.
So, and then I came back to I moved to Asbury Park, and I was back at the Saint for the next, 15 years. So I was there 17 years in total.
That's great. Well, that was definitely a journey that you just took us on.
It was I left a lot out, but it's been I've been doing sound now for about 40 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like I had a hell of a time.
Yeah, exactly.
I am blessed to have survived it, and I have a million stories, too numerous to tell in the space of this interview.
Well, all right. So, speaking on the live sound front, what is your favorite type of setup for a band? Is it like a 3-piece, a 4-piece? Do you like having these full, huge bands, or do you like the small, intimate acoustic type thing? What is your favorite? Your preference?
I like metal.
You like metal? Okay. Well, how many piece would that be? Like 2 guitars, bass, drums, mic and everything.
Yeah,
up
I
and
love
just-
that. I just love metal. I love that. But I'll be honest. I mean, I've had experiences where I did ragtime bands.
Oh, that's
I've
cool.
done acoustic things. I've done just one person with an acoustic guitar and had the most amazing night of my life too, you know?
That's awesome.
But I think I specialize in metal by default.
You put bottle caps on the kick beaters so you really get that tinky.
No, you know, one of the things I'll tell you what I don't do. So I have somewhere a couple of years back, I got in my head that, well, first off, I think there's a lot of egos in the world of doing sound.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of egos anywhere in music.
Well, anywhere in the music business. But I started, I mean, in my travels for years, there was always these douchebag sound guys that everybody hated. And it's a caricature. In fact, if you go onto YouTube and you type in douchebag sound guy or anything like that,
they're normally like 5'2".
Yeah, you'll find videos of these, you know, there was like cartoons of, and they're usually actors doing it, but it's a stereotype with real world implications, right? Mm-hmm. And I always didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be a nice guy. Like I don't even want to be a nice guy. I just love what I do. And how could you be a douchebag when you're just playing music? I never understood it. Like, how can you be an angry sound guy, right? So I got into my head that I want to be transparent. Like, and I always thought if I ever did some kind of blog or something about doing sound, I'd call it the art of being invisible. Because if you're really doing a good job at doing sound, nobody knows you're there. Mm-hmm. Like, I've always felt like that. If I'm doing good, like, it's never been about me. Like, I'm at the back of the room. It's what happens up on stage that matters, right?
Yeah.
And I've always felt like I don't want to color the band. So unless something's incredibly heinous, mm-hmm. I leave it as is, because I'm not in the head of the guy who's playing the drums or you know, it's like, if that's the way you want to sound, then I'm just going to make the way you sound the best it's going to sound. But I don't change it mm-hmm. to make me happy, because it's not about me.
True.
The only time somebody looks at the sound guy is when there's terrible feedback.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Or if the vocals turned off.
True.
You know, or the background vocals are off.
Like, what's going on, dude?
Yeah,
hey,
it's like, so my goal is to be invisible. Like, I don't want to be, I never be, you know, I've never got into the mentality like that the show's all about the kick drum. Like, some guy, you go to see some shows and all you hear is an amazing kick drum and everything's far below it. Like, I try to make it so that it's equally representative
of a CD.
Yeah, of what the band really sounds like. And I always do my homework. I listen to the band before I go do sound for them.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, because I want to know, like, what are their, like, I don't know if it's like, should I put reverb on the vocals? Should I put delay on the vocals? Should they be dry? You know, I listen to what they sound like and I try to replicate it live.
Okay, that's actually really nice of you.
And even with Useless, like, we've had numerous sound guys tell us that, you know, we don't even mic you, because you've seen it. We roll deep, and they're like, we mic the kick drum, the snare, and the vocals, and that's it. But you sat there and put mics on everything and tweaked everything and made it sound phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I tried my best.
We talk about it all the time too. It's you have that passion for your craft. Some guys just do it because they're getting their paycheck. You do it because you love to do it.
So the guys with the paycheck, they're the douchebag sound guys.
One thing I will say though, when it comes to doing live sound, like, the hardest thing to get to sound good, that I think is the most misunderstood, is the drums. I think that you really have to, like, I on the Bloodhound tour, the Monster Bang and Mucky Pup tours, I was also the drum tech, mm-hmm. and I learned to badly play the drums, but also, like, pay attention to real drum techs and, like, what drums are supposed to sound like. So I learned how to tune them and, like placement and shit like that. Yeah, it's like there's something about, like, bad sounding live drums ruin the whole mix.
That's
you know, and because they gotta sound semi-produced, you know. Yeah. But I'm not over the top with that. It's like, it just gotta. My thing is low end. I really like low end. I like people to be able to feel it.
Yeah.
So it's not loud. Like,
yeah.
I don't think a rock show needs to be super loud. I think if the low end is there, you could feel it down here, then that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, lots of low end, so you can feel it, and then everything floats on top.
Yeah, you know? No, that's definitely
that's
a good way
philosophy.
to look at it. Yeah, no, and it worked, so
yeah.
for sure. What was the most amount of mics you've used on a show? And let's stick with not like a touring act. Let's stick with like the Brighton or the Saint or something. Something very local. This
Okay,
is
I'll
Jersey
tell you the
Shore.
most crazy thing I ever did with sound was the drummer Terry Bozzio. Have you guys ever heard of him? He played at the Saint, and he had the world's largest drum set. He had 9 kick drums, like 34 toms. I'm making this up, but this is approximate.
Like yeah.
We had to bring in an extra stage. He had all his own mics. He had a sub mixer. Every mic, every drum had a trigger on it.
Oh my God.
And we had a 32 channel mixer at the time, and I used every single channel of that. And that included his sub mixing everything down from like, must have been like 50 inputs down to like 16 for me too.
Wow.
So that was the biggest one I ever did. And the funny thing is, first off, I thought he was going to be a douchebag, but he was one of the nicest guys I ever met.
I think you have to be if you're going to come in with that.
Yeah, and he played orchestral drums. It wasn't like, listen to my drum solos. They were all tuned to notes. So we play it like orchestral. So it was like music. It was like it was like classical music. And it was very specific. He said, no gates, no compressors, no subwoofers. Subwoofers had to be turned off.
Wow.
Yeah, he's like, my kick drums in the room are good enough. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And there was another sound guy there. He goes, I would have turned on the subwoofers. I was like, he would have known. Like this guy, he played with Frank Zappa, Missing Persons.
If the guy on the stage
He's a
says
legend.
don't do it, just
So I
do it.
That's one of the things like about not being a douchebag sound guy. I don't know better than the artist. If he said I want it to be like this, I'm not going to second guess him.
You make it the best that it can be.
Yeah, he wanted it his way, and I did it his way, and it was amazing. And his wife was there, and she said, "Best show of the tour."
Oh wow!
So
Hey,
that's
a
a
big
good
tip to the hat.
critique.
Yeah, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
What is your favorite effect to use, whether it's on a vocal, a guitar, a snare,
Reverb.
reverb?
Yeah, for a long time it was delay on vocals. Probably because I grew up in the Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin,
Okay.
Rob Halford era. And I thought there was a period when I was very heavy-handed with delay on vocals, and it was because I grew up with all those like stoner rock kind of, like Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, like all that stuff. And I thought that was the coolest thing. Like the first time I heard that on a record or live, I was like, whoa, that's amazing. It's like the voice keeps going on and on.
Yeah.
But eventually it became reverb.
Okay.
And I love reverb. Like, that band, Lower the Veil. They have this one song. This is one of the times when I went out of my comfort zone and I actually tried to alter their sound live. And they had this one song where it goes dun 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 dun, and the snare's like, poof. And so every 4 beats, whenever he would hit the snare on the 4th beat, I put the darkest, biggest, cavernous reverb. And they looked at me like, holy shit. I was like, if you ever do this song on a record, you got to do it this way. It was so sinister sounding.
Okay.
But there's something about reverb, like whether it's tight and small or ambient or...
Well, let's get a little tactical then for those of us that kind of understand. Was it more of a hall, a room, a plate, a spring?
It's you. I don't like springs and I don't like plates. I like rooms the most and halls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So when you go out to do your shows for a live sound, is there a specific tool or something that you would want? Like, what is your go-to thing that, like, I must have this if I'm going to do this job? What would that be for you?
Headphones.
Headphones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, you might ask me why.
Well, I would imagine
why
transients.
headphones? All right, I'll tell you that, I'm not so much of a geek about microphones or anything. I could do an entire show with this particular microphone, which is, to me, the gold standard. You can buy a million different kinds of mics, but you could do an entire show with 58s, and that's how it got started. And there was a reason why this is the most popular vocal mic in the world. This
Very
is a
true.
Beta 58.
Yeah.
So headphones. So sometime in that touring the world part of my life, I started doing these radio shows. They're called radio shows. They're in stadiums like the Meadowlands or, the Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia or LA Stadium in Los Angeles. I did all those big giant stadiums with 20, 30,000 people, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing that's interesting about them is when you do a radio show, you don't do a live sound check. You do a headphone only sound check. Mm-hmm. And they won't let you go live. They might let you, just for your ego, put the kick drum live for a second, but it's a strict rule. And it's because the radio shows, you don't want somebody going check 1, 2 while the local radio personalities in that stadium on a microphone talking to the people on the radio.
Yeah, doing the banter in between everything.
So you get used to doing a headphone only sound check, and it's an amazing thing because you get that incredible isolation if you have really good headphones. I like Sennheiser, and I became really good at it. I could do the entire show, and when I would, when you unmute everything live, it would always sound pristine and perfect. And I grew to really love headphones. And during a show, I am constantly soloing the band in my headphones. I'm listening for what's bleeding in there. If there's if I can hear a lot of guitar in the vocal mic, whatever it is, I'm trying to clean it up. I'm trying to clean it up. And that's what I use headphones for. And that's the key to how I do live sound. I spend a pretty significant portion of live shows on headphones.
Okay.
And also what I love about it is, let's take The Saint, for example. So there's a velvet curtain there, right? Mm-hmm. And who wants to hear me talking to the guy on the other side of the curtain? Can you hear how's the monitors, or the drummer, how's it back there? When I would be talking to the people on stage as they're doing their sound check, I'm not listening through to the PA in the room. Just people are hanging out, talking to each other, drinking, socializing, having fun. Mm-hmm. They don't need to hear check 1, 2 and all this crap, right? Yeah. So I'm talking to them with headphones. And most people don't realize that. It was such a normal thing for me that people never would notice it. And plus, I think that you need to give the audience a break between bands.
Yeah, sure.
They don't need to hear a constant barrage for 4 hours of So yeah, I would say that my favorite tool in doing sound is a good pair of headphones.
That's a very good way to do it. Now, that brings me up to that. For the next generation of, let's say, sound engineers and stuff, what would be a good tip for you to leave for them?
Never say I can't.
Okay.
Don't be a pain in the ass, but watch. I would say going to school. There's a great school here in Ocean County that's run by one of the other sound guys from the Saint. But there's nothing beats learning by doing. Mm-hmm. You can learn how to do anything by watching YouTube videos nowadays.
Oh, yeah. True.
I don't care I'm a homeowner. 90% of the stuff I've done as a homeowner, I've done by watching on YouTube.
How do you think we set up this podcast?
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're sitting here right now. That's how I learn how to do my day job, which is software testing. When I don't know how to do something, I'm learning, currently teaching myself automation and testing. I watch YouTube videos.
Okay.
And it's an amazing thing. But I'd say never say I can't. Always have a positive attitude. Be willing to accept any job to get your foot in the door.
That's a good tip.
Anything. Be the door guy. Be the light guy. Hang out with the and if the sound guy is approachable, ask him if he can hang out with you and watch what you do.
Anybody ever ask you that?
Oh, 1 million people.
Okay.
There's a lot of people, and I move really fast, but I'm willing to teach anybody how to do what I do. But always be excited about it and really listen to music. What I always tell sound people is that if you're going to do it really well, don't be a dick, first off. Never be a fucking dick.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah, never be a dick. And one of the things that I when I try to explain this to people that don't understand what sound people do is that you scan it while you're listening. So a show's going on. This is what I do. I'm listening to the overall sound of the band, but I'm kind of scanning it, like, where's the kick drum? Where's the snare drum? Where's the hi-hat? Where's the vocal? Where's the reverb? Where's the, like, the whole show. It's like going around and around in my head. Like, start listening to things critically and try to pick them out. Mm-hmm. And try to figure out where they exist in the frequency spectrum. You know, so you narrow what's coming out of the mic down. Mm-hmm. Like, the hi-hat mic doesn't have to be taking in a lot of low end and stuff. Like, how to clean it up. Like, try to listen to it critically and isolate things in your head, like, while you're listening to them. And to me, that helps make you be a better sound guy or girl.
That's a good tip.
Even just me as a musician, when I listen to, like, someone gives me a new record and I listen, to a band I've never listened. First, like, 2 or 3 times through, I barely even hear the vocals. Like, I'm so focused in on the guitars or the bass or the drums. I kind of listen to things in pieces. And then after I've grasped everything, then it kind of comes together as a whole.
I started out, like, when I was in, I went to college at Brookdale, and I took a course called The Art of Record Production. I'm not a studio guy. I don't like the studio. I don't like recording, and I don't like playing in the studio. I like the immediacy of live sound. But during that time, I graduated in 1982, and I also listened to a lot of diverse music, classical. I don't care what it is, like Nashville, like anything. Like, even if you don't like it, listen to it, because one day you might be doing sound for it. But a couple of things that really influenced me was, first I was listening to Peter Gabriel, and we came out with his biggest early recording. It was the one with Shock the Monkey on it, and it was called Peter Gabriel. And what was unique about that is there were 0 cymbals on it. And I used to read interviews with them,
that's weird.
And the people that produced it, and they talked about, well, we wanted it to be so the ambience, like the sizzle on the guitars and on Peter's vocal, the whisperiness. Like, if you listen to the vocals on that, there's nuances you don't hear anyplace else. And that's where I kind of got that critical listening thing. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. Go back and listen to that recording someday. Go find the one with Shock the Monkey on it and listen to it through headphones. It's freaking amazing.
Well, Metallica's got that album with no bass on it, too.
Yeah. Which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
The guy Thomas Dolby, you guys ever hear of him? He had a song called "Blinded by Science" back in the 1980s. It's like, blinded me with science. He was like he was one of the guys who helped invent cell phones. Has nothing to do with Dolby. His name just happens to be Thomas Dolby.
I hear Dolby, I go right to sound. It's like surround sound.
But his recordings were what I would refer to as ear candy. And if you listen to them, these sounds that were going on in there were freaking amazing. Like, get excited about the world, like the world of sound. Like, just listen with your eyes closed. Like, all those things. Like, get rid of your other senses and really listen. And that's what I do to this day.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, that's great. Good tip. So, the unfortunate part of this little podcast that we have to go.
I have to pay you?
No. We have to pay you, actually.
No, you don't.
I don't like talking about, but it is a fact that we are going through a pandemic with COVID. We all know how it affected bands and stuff. How did it affect your profession? Besides shutting things down, but what is like the vibe? What do you feel? What do you get like out of the music scene now? Is there like a resurgence to want to come back right away? Or is this something where it's like, well, we'll see what happens. We'll get to it. Musicians are lazy. Let's face it, we are.
Well, a couple of thoughts about that. I felt a lot of despair when it first happened last March. I did my last show at the Saint, and by Tuesday of that week, we were locked down. Like, I went from my office to working at home, and I immediately was like, I told my wife this a million times. I think I just did my last ever sound gig, because I saw that this was a weighty thing. I didn't think this was going to be easy, and obviously it wasn't. Like,
yeah, no.
And here we are over a year later.
Yeah.
And it's still, you look at what's going on in India, it's horrifying. You know, like they are really struggling there. And I just read today that the variant that's spreading there is now here.
Oh,
so we don't know what's going to happen here now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but that being said, for me personally, there was a moment of like real like, well, at first I was like, I think I did my last sound gig. And then I was like, well, maybe I did. And maybe that's a good thing. I've done it for 40 years. Like maybe it's time to put my headphones away.
Yeah.
And, but I didn't want to throw in the towel. What happened to me is I learned the value of being a really good husband, spending time with my wife, quieting down. A quieter life became really appealing fairly quickly. I actually really liked it. I liked it, but I still had this gnawing sense of like, I'm missing my creative outlet. And
that was your drive for how many years? You know?
Yeah, it was like, you know, it was like everything else that you do a lot, like riding a bike, you know, or walking, or it was just, it's what I am. It's what I do, right?
Part of you, yeah.
Yeah, and but I was like, you know, I think I had enough. Like then I got to the point of acceptance, because you know, the opposite of acceptance is anxiety, and I don't do well with anxiety. Mm-hmm. And, you know, a couple of months ago, I got the opportunity to go do sound at the Braden. I did sound for the final 7 shows at the Braden before it went out of business from the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's tragic. That place was there for 50 years. I did sound for the very last show, the very last band.
Wow.
So the last hit of a snare drum at the Braden was me. Wow. And I had said to a number of people that, you know, it would be really eloquent if I can end my sound career where it started. And I thought that was it. I thought I actually had done it. You know, yeah. I left there. That
mission accomplished, yeah.
I was like, I think I actually did it. I ended and then, you know, I found out the Braden was closed, end of the road. And just recently I found out that Scott at the Saint wants me back. So I'm going to be back at the Saint when we were open. Now, what's going to happen in the future? It depends. I think it depends how your values changed in the last year. Do you want to go out and see shows, or did you find that being at home and a quieter, slower life appeals to you? Like, it's a lot of both. Like, I love being at home with my wife and our giant dog, mm-hmm. Scout.
See, our thing is too that we've been asking people is, do you think it's even going to come back anywhere near where it was? Like, how many clubs are actually going to come back?
A lot didn't. A lot aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a shell of its former self.
But then you look at, you know, there's shows that, like these giant festivals with 9 Inch Nails and Metallica, and
they don't come to this region.
They're not coming to this region.
Yeah, they never do.
No. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, in the meantime, our home theaters have gotten better. I don't know about you guys, but you know. My wife bought us this amazing giant TV, and we got a Polk Audio soundbar.
Nice.
And it's pretty amazing to watch stuff at home in the comfort of our own home without bumping into people. And
I have to admit, YouTube was my friend in that, you know, really solid 3 months where it was like, hey, there's nothing. You don't even want to go out. I looked up all my favorite bands, and all of a sudden you're seeing shows from like the 90s, the 70s. I'm like, wow, man, this wasn't on here before. You know, it was really cool.
Yeah, I guess the question is different really that bad? You know, I think we're programmed to get used to something, and then when it's gone, we either mourn for it or we accept where we're at.
You adapt,
you know? And you find new things. I love my life right now. If I don't do sound again, I'll be fine.
All right. Well, this is one I've been asking people too. Is just to put it out there, as an idea I keep floating out there.
I was gonna say this
is as a sound guy, do you think that clubs, for those people that aren't going to want to start going back out, like you said, if they're comfortable in that quiet life, you offer like a $10 ticket to stream it online instead of going to the club? What's your opinion on that as a sound guy?
Yeah, you'd have to integrate
And say
both.
you'll still have people that show up, buy tickets, and go to the show, but you can also have a setup in the bar where you could pay a $10 online fee and just watch a live stream as well from sitting on your couch.
I think it increases the size of your audience. I think people are still going to want to go to live shows, though.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying, then you're catering to both
audiences.
audiences.
I think we're learning how to live a more online life.
Don't tell Scott we want this. We're gonna patent this now. Don't tell Scott.
I think there's I told
These videos
Scott
have
that
been
years
released
ago. I had this whole idea at the Saint to. I mean, years ago, I was like, we should do live streaming here, and I told him one day, I was like, we could. The nerd in me said we could take a camera, right? And get a model car, a railroad track, right? And put it on the ceiling and mount an upside down model railroad car and have a camera hanging off of it so it could move back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
We could put tracks up there and and I was like, we should do this. There's this one streaming thing by Roland that's an all-in-one box for streaming video. You can have 5. Now you can get a free program and put it on your Mac or your, PC laptop.
Yeah.
And do the same thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it opens up the world. Your audience is instead of 30 people.
Because like I said, you're going to have those people that are going to show up to the club and drink, and hang out. But you're also going to have people that just don't want to be, like you said, they want that quiet life. They don't want to be in that mess of people anymore. And I think that's one way for them to try to bounce back from this.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be okay, and I think there's a value in it. I like it. I watch stuff that's streaming. I like it.
Or even if you got other stuff going on and you just can't make it, but you really want to see that show, you just $10 online, pay it, boom, you pop it up on your TV.
Yeah, I think it's the future.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see.
We don't have the little ball going, hey.
I mean, the thing is, I think if we accept it now, we're prepared for when something like this happens again. Because I don't think we've gone through our last pandemic.
No, but the last one was 100 years ago.
Yeah, but we don't know. That's the thing.
They also meddle with viruses a lot more these days.
I guess so.
Well, without getting too out there, I think we are powerless over nature. I think we try to control it, and we build houses to live in, and we do all this. But you saw what happened during Hurricane Sandy.
Yeah.
So
Hurricane Sandy hit about
right
a mile that
there.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nature is going to bite us in the ass. It's happened many times before. It's
There's no stopping it either.
But the thing is, if we perfect what we're doing right now, and that, I think we can keep the arts alive a lot more.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
I think this helped when the arts got put down, and I say put down in a nice way, that there's no shows, there's no nothing, people didn't even want to get together. And you did this, you got Zoom or whatever the other things that you could talk to people online. That became kind of huge. So there are tools, I think, in the making. I think if you can get something where you can record with your bandmate in a different spot, live or in real time, that will be a game changer. But I don't know how you would do that.
It's possible.
I'm sure it is, but there's got to be something with the internet, because if you want it in real time, we could ship tracks back and forth.
In order to do it in
now.
real time, you'd have to have some kind of cloud-based system where you're all sending a signal to it at one time.
Yeah.
There is something that's doing that. I don't know what it's called, but there is. It's it adds an equal amount of latency.
Okay.
So that's not. It's real time, but there's a. It takes latency, which is, the delay of, let's just call it the processing delay, how fast the internet is and how fast your device is.
Yeah, and everybody's going to have different internet speeds.
And it adds that in advance, I believe. And then it adds or subtracts it in real time to equalize everything.
Okay.
It's sort of like a speed control.
Gotcha.
I think that's how it works. I could be making it up. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's something to work for the next one, I guess. Whenever the next.
But in the meantime, do you want to learn to play the cello? Learn to play the cello. You want to learn to play piano? Play piano. Do something different.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that bought guitars over this, and guys saying at stores are like, we sold out of Fenders.
Yeah.
Fender had its best quarter ever.
Yeah.
You
What,
know,
what
so
was Eric saying on our last the one episode?
It was
He said
Fender.
that the 2020 was Fender's best year ever as a company.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it.
As a
that's
company,
Fender.
and they've been around a long time.
Yeah,
and you figure,
50s.
where everybody else is struggling, they had their best financial year ever.
That
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me.
No, people trying to pick up an art, you know, that's great.
Yeah.
Now, as things open up and go back to work and life starts settling back in, see how many people stick with the art. That's the question
Yeah.
for the future.
I like working on my house.
Yeah.
I do. You know, I live in beautiful Leisure Village West in beautiful Manchester, New Jersey, and I bought my own home. And my beautiful wife Julie and my giant dog Scout and I live there, and we have made it like the most awesome avant-garde 5-star hotel ever. It's
That's
beautiful,
awesome.
and we
Good
did
for
it
you.
ourselves with YouTube videos and Google.
That's great. Good for you guys. I'm happy for you. You got that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't.
Oh, by the way, I would like to mention that I am also no longer a drug addict, and I am 100% sober for 5 years.
Congratulations. That's
And
great.
it's the
Keep
best
it up.
thing. It's one of the best things I ever did in my life.
Keep
That's
it
awesome,
up.
man.
Keep that up. That's great.
Yeah.
We just want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Stuck Up Sticker Company. My man Ian, he's a great guy.
Ian McKenzie Smith.
Yes, one and the same. Yes, he's a great guy. He's my bass player, one of my good friends, and for sponsoring the podcast. He said that you just tell him you heard about him here. He'll give you 10% off your first order. You can find him at stuckupstickers.com. He can print stickers, banners, stage banners, postcards. If you could print it, he could do it.
Nice.
Yep.
Very cool.
All right, so last question of the night for you. And this is, I mean, you could take it, globally on the music scene if you really want to, but we're talking pretty much just the Jersey music scene. There's one thing you could change about the entire music scene. What would it be and why?
Wow.
Right?
If there's
That's a
one,
doozy.
this is going to take a second.
Yeah, go ahead. Take your time. Take your time. It's not something you can just blurt out because I've gotten several very good answers for it. You could take it as a musician because I know you've played in bands. You could take it as a sound guy. You could take it however you want.
Take it
One
as an
thing
observer.
you could change about the music scene and why.
That's an interesting question. Well, this is going to sound maybe slightly. All right. Well, I've thought about this a lot actually, and it has to do with being a sober guy. Is that so? Music globally, and I think it goes back even to medieval times, has always been connected with alcohol,
That's a party.
right? That's
yeah.
the way it goes. I think I would like to see more venues that are not bars.
Say a dry venue.
How do you like that? Dry venues, like not even
For someone who wants to just go experience
but
the music.
with real production, like a Saint or Starland or the Stone Putty. Does it always have to? Because there's a lot of people out there that are like me, who don't drink or do drugs, but would love to go see music, but they can't because they're afraid to go out to bars.
Oh, that's a good point.
If I would say I would like to see more venues that are not drinking establishments.
Yeah, so it's more focused on the music and not the
Yeah,
party.
I'll tell you what, for me, it's hard to believe that knowing the physics of the way our ears work when you're drinking, like music sounds better sober than it does drunk, believe it or not. And most people will disagree with me, and I'm willing to fight them on it.
Well, I think the alcohol gives certain non-musical people rhythm that they never had.
Listen, if it makes you feel something, then you might feel something more than music. I'm nothing against drinking or doing drugs. I was a professional level pothead for 40 years. I have been to Amsterdam like 30 something times. I know my shit about weed. I was a dealer. I know all that. I listen to music on every kind of drug under the planet, under the sun. I even did sound like falling down drunk in arenas and stuff. But now that I'm a sober guy, I hear music differently. It's like it's clean. It's like I hear it. Like I can hear it. I don't know how to explain it. So yeah, I would like to see more opportunities for people that might not want to party and be around people partying to listen to music.
Yeah, because I'd say at least the vast majority of people, they're not going out to see music. They're going out to have a good time.
Right.
You know, as we're like people like us, when we go to things like that, we want to see the music and the band and we pay attention to everything. And most people are just there for, have a couple drinks, have a good time.
Can I say one other thing?
Go right ahead. Sure.
It brings me to my number one pet peeve.
Okay.
Shut the fuck up when you're at a show. Just stop talking, especially when you're in an acoustic show.
Oh, jeez, that's got to be the worst.
I love acoustic music. I do. I love it. Like, I love a good acoustic act. Like, a singer-songwriter who's got an acoustic guitar and a voice, or, bluegrass, or anything that's quiet. Like, I like loud music, but I also like quiet music. I like when you're in a room with 50 people and it's drop dead silence. You can hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
But there's always this one person or people that are drunk off their ass and they're just like,
yammering away. Yep.
I just one quick story about that. I did sound for this guy named David Johansen twice at the Brighton Bar. You guys know who that is?
No.
He was the lead singer of the New York Dolls.
Oh, okay.
Which was a seminal, punk band in the 70s. A lot of, they were super famous. And he kind of looks like Mick Jagger. And he did an acoustic show at the Brighton Bar. And people paid $25 a ticket to sit in the front behind the velvet rope. Okay. And there's all these other people behind the velvet rope. And this one guy was next to me, and him and his girlfriend, he got in for free, and he was just like the whole entire show. He's like, meh. And people who paid $25 are turning around, looking at him like they want to kill him. And I said, dude, and I know this guy, I said, dude, you have to shut the fuck up. The show is up there. It's not you and your girlfriend. He looked at me like he wanted to kick my ass. And I finally lied to him, which I do not recommend. I said, you see that little thing up on the wall right above your head? That's a microphone. I'm recording this show. And it wasn't. It was it was like an outlet or something. But I'm trying to get this guy to be quiet. And he looked at me like he wanted to kill me. But the moral of this story is sometimes get off your phone and shut the fuck up and watch the band. Yeah. I think people
appreciate what's going on in front of you.
I think people are rude at shows. Particularly in New Jersey. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, people go to shows and they just are like, meh. And
I think people are rude in Jersey just in general.
Yeah.
Well, I feel that the younger generations don't care as much about music. So that's why, like, it goes to like, well, we're going to hang out and you just happen to be here, so we'll just deal with you.
It can be the older generation too, though.
Really?
I had shows at the Saint where there were, well, here's what happens with older people sometimes. They haven't been out to clubs in a long time and say they're older, like me. I'm going to be 60 next week. And they don't know how to act at a rock club, and they get wasted, and they're like,
this guy talks, and then he talks louder than he talks louder.
I had an old guy at the Saint once sick his son after me because I told him to shut up at an acoustic show. I said it politely. I went up to him. I said, excuse me, sir. There's an artist that plays at the Saint a lot called Rick Barry. He's one of my good friends. And it got so bad that he made business cards to give out to people at the door. Like, this is a no talking show. You probably heard that at the Saint. Like, there's even a little sign.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
So it was a Rick Barry show, record release show. There's like packed wall-to-wall people. And this guy behind me is with his drunken son, and they're like, bah, 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 bah. And everybody's looking at him. And I went over to him and I said, sir, show's going to be over in about 20 minutes. If you want to talk, you can go out into the back or you can just be quiet. But, like, let's enjoy this quiet experience together. He's like, fuck you. And I was like, all right. I said, I'm going to be over here. You're there. Like, there's like 5 songs left. And then finally, I went over to him. I was like, please, I can ask you to leave. I will have you removed if you don't stop because you're really distracting. and his son's there, and his son went like this to me, goes, and I was like, "What are you?" I laughed at his face. I was like, "What are you going to do?" You know, and it's just really rude. I think so old people can be poorly behaved too.
Or maybe it's just a thing. You know, there's
or maybe it's just the booze.
I don't know. I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know.
Yeah, and we can't control what other people do.
True.
And we can't change anybody else.
Yeah,
that's true too.
And if we get full of resentments, then we're having a bad time. That's the thing. Now I realize that, like, if I'm getting frustrated at the guy here, I'm not paying attention over there either.
That's true.
Like, so I gotta check myself and try to avoid getting resentments and distractions too. You know, there's an art to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming out, man.
Yes,
thank you for inviting me. This was really fun.
We appreciate it, and it was a good one. We got some good stuff.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Well, tune in next Monday for the next episode of the Jersey Shore Musicians Podcast.
Peace out.